Well, the Denver Nuggets and the Miami Heat are in their first rematch since the NBA Finals in 2023. It's taken a while. This is basically like what, game 60 of the NBA season, but hey, finally happening on a leap day. I'm Ryan, he's Swipa. Swipa, what do you take away from what we've seen so far from the Nuggets and the Heat after that NBA Finals?
That they are the same teams they always are. The Nuggets
Mm.
are kind of as sleepwalking as some people say through the season, even though they're doing really well and they're playing really well and the record looks really well. And Jokic is on track to win another MVP, but they just don't feel like they've been like Boston Celtics regular season dominant. And then the Heat are, they do this, they're doing this, and then they do this when they lose 6 games in a row, and then all of a sudden the schedule starts changing. It's like Jimmy Butler looks outside, he leaves the cave with his beard and long flowing hair with his emo little piercing, and then he steps out of the cave, looks at the weather, and he's like, it's February 25th, I see. I think I'll start ramping up. And then literally the Heat start going like this the rest of the year. And then they go into the playoffs and everybody's like, but they didn't play like this all year. Well, that's where we are. We're at the very beginning of the ascension of the Miami Heat, who are 8-2, and they have been absolutely dominating their competition. Jimmy hasn't even been there for all these games, but Bam Adebayo letting everybody know he's better than Domantas Sabonis. He's arguably the fourth best center in the NBA. Yeah. And the Heat, they're thriving again.
Lo and behold, man, it's funny. Cleaning the Glass has Miami at a 0.0 net rating, 18th in the NBA, and they kind of make up for it by winning some games in the clutch because they know how to execute. They know what they're doing. But it is just one of those things where they don't take the regular season as seriously as your Boston Celtics or your Cleveland Cavaliers or New York Knicks or any team like that. And so those teams are going to end up being above them in the standings for that reason. But you just know what playoff Jimmy's going to provide. And they are like, they're slightly different. They're mostly the same in terms of like how they approach things. Like Jimmy's there, Bam's there. Tyler Hero should be healthy for this time around. Duncan Robinson is a central figure for them as well. But they also have Terry Rozier. They also have Jaime Jaquez Jr., their rookie, who's just playing out of his mind for most of this season. It's been really interesting to see that. How do you think, does any of that personnel sort of shift like how you feel about them from a competitiveness standpoint and how they match up with the Nuggets specifically?
Sure. Here's their top rotation. They're going to be playing Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Jaime Jaquez, DeLon Wright, Terry Rozier, and Caleb Martin. That's their top 8, not including Nikola Jovic, Haywood Highsmith, and Kevin Love. That's 11 players that all can see playoff time. Yeah. So the thing is about them, their top end talent ain't the same. But brother, come playoff time, of those 11 players, 9 are going to probably win you a game here and there. Yeah. So I think that's like the misconception about the Heat. It's like, well, Jimmy Butler, Bam, regular season, borderline all NBA players. Well, Jimmy takes the regular season just about as serious as Jamal Murray does. But then once the playoffs start, Jimmy's like, cool. Now, first round, I'm basically fully healthy. My jump shot is fully alive. Now I'm cooking. And defensively, he's one of the best wing defenders in the league. And him and Bam with Spoelstra's scheme, now they got some size. The wings with Caleb and Jaime. And then you put Terry Rozier on top of that or DeLon Wright. They're going to be an absolute nightmare for somebody. So I fully expect big things out of Miami Heat again this year. And I think they match it well with the Nuggets, but not enough to beat them. But I think that's just the solve. Like Jokic and Murray are the problem. The shot making is the problem. They're still going to be really good, but I think they can actually make a nice little run through the East again.
I do think the size is an interesting matchup difference where rather than having Kyle Lowry and Gabe Vincent, two undersized point guards, guys who or anything like that, but he's only one guy. And then you've got a guy like DeLon Wright, who's bigger, who's a lot more versatile, somebody who I know you and I both would love to have on the Nuggets. Like he'd be a great fit for a team like this. And any player that fits well with the Nuggets, probably a good championship caliber player to have on your roster. So totally understand the the interest with that roster and how they can kind of put things together. On Denver's side of things, though, is there anything differently that they do that could give Miami some problems this time around? Maybe different problems?
Yeah, they're. I think people like are going to be. Their defense was really elite last year. I think it finished just number 2, if I believe correctly, in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're going to be better. I mean, the starting unit, they're going to be good. But then Christian and Peyton are better defenders than Jeff and Christian were last year. But then on top of that, like I think Peyton's also a better defender than Bruce Brown. Now they're not going to be the same level of driving team with no Bruce Brown. Those DHOs aren't going to look the same and all that. Some of the spot up shooting might not be as good here and there. But I think the Nuggets will be better defensively because they're going to be so much bigger. Because again, we've seen Peyton Watson is closed for KCP. He's closed for AG, and he's closed for Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah.
So they're going to be able to throw him in a lot of different situations. Christian Brown's going to have some really good moments. The only thing about the Nuggets that's different, and I've voiced this on Twitter multiple times, I've voiced this on a couple of shows, Reggie Jackson is the only player in the rotation. You tell me if I'm tripping. I think he's the only player in the rotation that doesn't fit the Nuggets play style super well, meaning a physical, dominant player who sets the tone physically. Bruce was a force. He was like a running back. He set the tone physically. The only player, I think Michael does. Michael's really good on the boards with that. He competes on the glass. Obviously, AG, Jokic, Murray, and KCP, all physical players as well. And for me, Peyton and Christian are. It just doesn't – Reggie's the biggest wild card for me of he doesn't set the tone as a player, and his biggest asset is shot making and play making. But we need him to be relatively passable defensively in a playoff run.
Yeah, one of the things that you noticed from Denver's defense last year was how they could really switch everything with their second unit. Bruce could switch onto bigs, he could switch onto forwards, and you'd be okay with it. With Reggie, you're not really okay with it, and that's one of the weaknesses that Denver's had this year, especially when Zeke Naji's out there and they want to go switch all. Like, Zeke can be fine at the top. The problem that you run into is you need somebody that's going to battle down low a little bit, and Reggie just hasn't really been able to do that much, so I know that's a different weakness for Denver than what they've had in the past. I don't think that Reggie's going to play as much. I think if it were up to me, I think that you basically flip Christian's minutes with Bruce's minutes from last year and have Christian kind of play the heavier minutes, and then somebody like Reggie's going to play a lighter amount of minutes, more like an 8th man as opposed to the 6th man that he's been for much of this.
Who do you think leads to Nuggets in minutes off the bench
in the playoffs? I'm gonna say it's Christian still. I think that Peyton has a case for it, and because he's one of the only front court guys, but I think that Christian gives them a little bit more, I'd say, stability with some of the actions that they like to run. He's basically going to replace what KCP does from a defense and spacing perspective, and a little bit more, like, I guess, in tune with it. Peyton's going to make your wow plays. He's going to make your dynamic plays. Probably going to be less about that, though, in a playoff series. So I think they'll probably go with Christian.
It's tough, man. I think it's going to end up being Peyton. I think Peyton is a little – I just think Peyton's better. Like, at
That's
this
fine,
point
yeah.
in time.
Yeah.
But, you know, here's the thing with Malone. Malone feels like he needs a point guard. I don't think the Nuggets need a point guard.
Yeah.
I think that if you knew you needed a point guard, you knew you needed a defender. And if you knew you needed a defender, then you should have gotten Delon Wright, Dennis Smith Jr., or Chris Dunn. I just don't think that, like, giving Malone an option at a point guard, he's going to play them. He did it with Facu. He's going to do it with Colin. He's going to do it with Reggie. But for me, like, even Julian Strother, like, I just would rather have a bigger player that's not going to get taken advantage of as easy. And they're like Jamal Murray, they're going to switch hunt Jamal Murray, but that's just because who else are you going to switch hunt?
Right.
Like, he's 6'4". Like, I'm not switch hunting Porter. He's 6'10". So
you might do it a little bit, especially when you put him into, like, movement actions, but not necessarily for ISOs or post-ups or anything.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's not really – like, Nuggets at this point, they're – as they showed last year, we're good with that. Anthony Edwards, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead. Like, if you beat him, you beat him. But we're not going to, like, change up what we're doing because you're isolating Michael Porter Jr. We're comfortable with him as a defender. And if he wins 1 every 3 times, then that's perfectly fine. Now we're going back on the other end after a stop, and then, we're doing what we need to do. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Tying this back into the Heat, just how do you think Like Denver's going to be on the second night of a back-to-back after playing the Kings on Wednesday. I think they'll still be locked in, obviously, but they're probably not going to be as locked in as if they were just playing the Heat on a one-off here. How do you think the game goes? Where do you think they go from here?
Oh, they win.
Yeah.
It's going to be at home, so it's they should take care of that business. It's at home, right?
Yeah, it is. Like both of those games are at home, but it's also second night of back-to-back, and the Heat are playing great.
Sure, cool, but you got to win. Like he didn't send out that text message for no reason. I just think at this point, it's like just take advantage of what's in front of you. Like you're the better team. You already skid your 3 games. Whatever little break you need to take, you got those 3 games off, and then you got your All-Star break off. And then at this point, it's like take care of business versus the Kings. You haven't beaten them all year. Take care of business versus the Heat. And then you got the Lakers. And then that next week, you got some dogs coming in the house. So I think they should take care of business and win this game.
I think they'll probably win 2. I think it's going to be tough. This is one of those ones where you're going to be very competitive towards the end of it. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat catch Denver, like at that, like in a late game situation where Denver's focus or their execution just isn't as good as it usually is. But I still think, like, look, both of those teams are dangerous. If this was a finals rematch in the upcoming year, I wouldn't necessarily I'd feel pretty good about it if I were Denver because they've already won that matchup, but it's still going to be tough. Like the Heat make you work, man. That's one of their major tenets, and it's going to be fascinating to see. So I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Right. That's good.
Well, let us know, folks. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. If this were the finals rematch in the NBA Finals this year, how would you feel if you're a Nuggets fan? He's Swipa. I'm Ryan. We're out.